Welcome to the Manufacturing Shakeup. We're your hosts, Ellen Feldman-Ornato
and Jenny Drescher. We're talking with dynamic women from across the manufacturing scene in Connecticut.
Hey folks, it's Ellen. And one of the things you may not know about me is that in my early career, I actually majored in urban planning and economic development. And I thought I was going to save the world and build affordable housing in cities. And I got my degrees, and then I went out into the world and I wound up regulating subdivisions and strip malls in suburban areas. And I loved it. So even though my formal training was in urban planning and I wanted to work in a city, the trajectory that my career took me on took me to all sorts of places that I never would have imagined, where I learned way more and had a total shift in my career and direction. And today we're going to be talking with Hope Kavulich, who's with us from Synectic, and she's going to be talking about her career trajectory. So hi, Hope. Welcome to the Manufacturing Shakeup.
Hello.
So let's start off with a question. We know from talking to you before the podcast started that you knew you wanted to be an engineer from very early on, or at least loved math. So tell us a little bit about just your early stuff. What lit you up about getting into that field?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so from a young age in school, we had to take robotics courses, math courses, hands-on education. And from that course, I really said, I like this. I want to keep going. Something about being hands-on with not only the robots, but then you go to the computer as well and you code something up and then watch the thing you built run and move and do all sorts of things was attractive in a sense. I liked that a lot.
I just love the sentence, I had to take robotics classes. Like, right? That's the coolest sentence in the whole wide world.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just amazing to me. Is that so? Can I ask, is that something that was part of, were you at a trade school? Were you at a technical school? Was that your ordinary high school in your town? How does that sentence fit into your high school history when you did that?
Yeah. So it was actually public middle school. It was a required course in 7th or 8th grade, I believe. And it was half a semester, or I guess half a year. They didn't do semesters yet then, but it was one of those required courses right next to home ec, actually.
That is in what town?
Stratford.
In Stratford. Okay.
Stratford.
Very cool. Shout out to Stratford. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope they still do it.
Yeah, I hope they do too. Were you one of those kids that joined the robotics club as well?
I did. I don't really remember it too much, but I remember I was in it.
Okay.
Well, the reason I wanted to bring that up, Hope, is because, we at the Shakeup, one of our missions is to really highlight what people are doing in Connecticut in manufacturing, what towns are doing, and how they're advancing the educational journey for young people to go into STEM and manufacturing, because Connecticut has so many amazing and unique programs that allow for that. And most often people just don't even know that they're out there. So could you talk for a moment about your journey at Quinnipiac and what you learned how to do there and what was great about that program?
Yeah, so I went to Quinnipiac for my undergrad. I went in as undeclared engineering because I knew I wanted to do something with the robotics or with just mechanical components, where then I said, okay, I'm going to go mechanical engineering. It's a very jack of all trades. And I knew I wanted to focus on not necessarily medical devices, but I liked that medical side of the learning, helping people, not necessarily the other side, which might be your Lockheed Martins or your electric boats. But from there, I took all the courses and the small classes that they provided, and I loved it, and I kept going.
What was it you loved?
Oh, well, there's a lot. I mean, I love when you get into it more and more with any major, really. You get more hands-on courses, you get more courses that go to your specific likings. So again, I took another robotics-based course senior year. So it was very hands-on, and you did a lot more coding than you did in 7th grade, but
Mhm.
Yeah.
you built something from scratch and you saw it move, and it was just that itch that you got scratched and you want to keep going.
Yeah. So what were you doing as a kid? Like, what was the kind of tinkering that you were doing that was an indicator, probably to your parents and your teachers, that a technical career might be suitable for you? What were the clues? Like, what do you think they were seeing? What were you doing that showed that?
I'm not sure what my parents saw. Mostly, I'm a first-time engineer for the family, I would say, on either side. So no one else really did what I did. I mean, I liked Legos like every kid would. And I grew up in the more technological age. We have laptops in schools now. We have to learn how to use that kind of stuff. So that being an invitation just kind of kept going. And then, of course, with every child and parent, I was the one, how do I work this phone? How do I work the computer? How do I get this to work? So I was figuring it out. And then I kept going.
So innate curiosity about how stuff worked
Yeah.
and asking a lot of questions led you to pursue figuring out how things worked.
And there's also always the why get someone to come in the house and fix something when you could take the back panel off yourself and try to figure it out? Did it always work? No, we called people still.
Yep.
But I went back there and saw how it all worked.
That's exciting and terrifying at the same time. When I think back to my kids, I wouldn't want them taking electrical appliances apart.
I wasn't doing it by myself. There was always someone looking.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
And you had a makerspace at Quinnipiac, which I think is phenomenal. Can you tell folks what a makerspace is and how you used it in the mechanical engineering program?
So we developed, it was my class, I think, that started it, this huge room called the Makerspace that had assortment of 3D printers, laser engraver, laser cutter, a whole wall of tools that you could only imagine, a whole wall of small 3D printers that people could come in and use, and then other small cute things like mug presses, label cutters, embroidery machines. And it was really an area where if you were an engineering student or any student on campus and took the proper quiz to pass, you could come in and make whatever you wanted.
Hmm. Okay. And how did that prepare you for getting into an actual job after college?
So since me and one of my friends were the founders of it and we helped the administration create it, we were called super users, which were the managers of the space. So we would open it up for office hours in a sense and say, anyone can come in from this time to this time and we'll help you out. So not only were we in charge of creating the manuals for all the machinery, the sort of quizzes that you needed to test on to make sure we knew what you were doing, but also just managing people in general of, okay, yeah, we can help you make that. Do you want to learn how to make it yourself? Do you want to print this 3D file? Do you want to engrave something? Don't catch that on fire, please, and so on.
So I love the idea that you got to have this space and also really learn how to hone your people and management skills at the same time. I mean, that's a pretty unique opportunity. How does that show up in your work now? How has that transferred?
Well, we actually, ironically enough, use the same 3D printer here, so that helped a lot. But it was really figuring out how machinery works and then explaining it to other people, because sometimes people might not understand. You don't just hit the go button and magic happens. But especially in the workplace where it's not just people younger than me, it was a very nice change of pace to hear it from all sides of, okay, we got to make sure this works properly, but how are we going to do that? Let's just call the guy in. And no, I'm kidding. But we now open the back panels here as well instead of hiring someone because it's an office full of engineers. And why would we hire someone when we could do it ourselves?
There you go.
Right. Why would you? And honestly, that's kind of like, I'm thinking about how I would have felt. I mean, you're now, several years into your career, but I'm thinking about our young listeners out there who might be these people who are saying, wait a minute, I want to figure this out. I want to figure this out. And so this idea of them following a technical track through so many of our great programs gives them a way to dig in and say, I want to figure this out. How does this work? How does this work? I want to figure it out. And then be able to use that in so many ways, both creatively and at home and at work. I mean, that's pretty fun. And I wonder also, your job at Synectic involves a lot of this particular kind of activity, figuring stuff out. Like, can you educate our audience for a hot minute on what in the world is product realization for the folks out there who are not in this vernacular?
Yep. So Synectic is product development, and product development over a span of 6 phases is phase 1 and 2. We're figuring out your design. You have a concept for something, or you did science and math and you figured out something. We'll take that information, we'll put it into a design, we'll iterate the design, we'll show you it. And then phase 3 comes along where we build a prototype and go, okay, we could get this built once at a very expensive rate. Phase 4 and 5, and a little bit of 3 is where I come in for product realization, which is the manufacturing portion of it. Making this from a one-off of a very expensive prototype to something that can be manufactured multiple times, pass all your tests. We mostly focus on medical devices. Not always, we do plenty of other things, but getting that clinical testing, your validation, your DVT testing, biocompatibility if it requires it, that's where I come in and I either figure out where to send devices to do those tests, I figure out the packaging, and I optimize the manufacturing process of the part. So if it's easier to change the part in the sense of molding so it can just fit together nicely and reduce either places of failure or just amount of time to assemble, I will figure that out.
And how many different types of materials are you working with? Is it metals, plastics, and beyond? Like, what do you work with most frequently?
We do metals, plastics, all sorts of things. A lot of catheter-based things. We usually try to do molds because that's the easiest to create a prototype with and then create an official tool with. But
and so taking this out to, like, how does this impact people in the world? Because one of the women we interviewed recently, she said, we're really proud because something that we used is on a spaceship that's headed for Mars. So, like, if you're working on a catheter design in your product realization area, what types of procedures or operations is that being involved in? Like, where does your product land in the world in some of the things that you're creating?
Well, I've heard they're everywhere. I mean, there's some things, like I said, it's not necessarily just medical devices, but you could go to the grocery store and see some of our products right there at the self-checkout or on the shelf. We could also see it is a lot of medical in the sense of a lot of procedures will use certain devices that we've made or helped them manufacture. And a lot of it is startups. We get a lot of people that come in as a startup company with an idea or a concept that they've proven works, and we will scope that out for them. We'll do the design, we'll do the testing, and then if they keep going, we'll do the manufacturing for the first rounds of either anywhere from 100 to 1,000 pieces if they want it.
Mm-hmm.
And
so moms and dads out there, you're wondering about, how could I take my kid who likes to tinker and turn them into Hope? Because Hope is really describing this amazing, incredibly interesting process of, if you've got an inventive kid, they could do work like what Hope is doing, where they're really taking someone's idea, bringing it to life and bringing it out into the world to do good.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a mighty call to follow our inventive nature, especially as we continue to learn how to leverage technology to help folks.
Paige, if I asked you to look back over the the last couple of years at Synectic, what's the thing that when you think about, I helped to make that? What do you have one thing, one product that stands out that you're like, wow, that is so cool that I had a part in that?
I would have said yes, probably a year or two ago, but there's something new that comes in the door every day where at a group discussion we'll go, yeah, that'll never work. And then 5 months later, we're looking at a working prototype of something that was seen as impossible before. So I don't have a specific product really, because they're all so fascinating in their own ways.
No favorite children. Just
No.
all of them are amazing.
Yeah. I mean, some of them are really cool. I will say they have a bit cooler sense than just doing some paperwork, but
Too funny. So I'm gonna wind down this episode with some of our shake-up factors. So I hear a couple of really cool things that we can take from Hope today. Shake-up factor number 1 is parents out there. What is your kid up to? Are they tinkering? Pay attention if they're tinkering. And friends who are parents or not parents, but are still, liking to tinker, know that there are places like the makerspace at Quinnipiac, although that's not public. We do have other makerspaces in Connecticut, like we've got our makerspace right in Hartford. So if you notice that you have an inner tinkerer that wants some expression.
Inner tinkerer. Say that one 3 times.
That's right.
Yeah,
inner tinkerer. That's right. So there are maker spaces right here in Connecticut and labs where you can play and have fun. And you could even take your kid to some of these places. And you can even send your kid to college to a place like Quinnipiac. So that's a big bulky shake-up factor for today, which is tinker. Let's all tinker because tinkering is fun and it leads to really great things. Shake-up factor number 2 that I want to invite us all to try on is, Hope's work involves a lot of creativity and a lot of aligning creativity to execution. Where in your life right now do you want to create more alignment between your creativity and your execution? Because that's something we can all be thinking about in any part of our lives, whether we are trying to fix the vacuum cleaner that stopped working, or we're trying to make dinner, or we're trying to figure out what's next for our career. So Hope Kavulich from Synectic, thank you so much for hanging out with us today and teaching us so much about these great programs and how you can carry them into a career.
thank you.
Thanks, Hope.
The Manufacturing Shakeup is sponsored by the Connecticut Office of Manufacturing, produced by Maselli Productions and Gale Communications, and hosted by the Boulder Company.